Coming up on today's show, the FIA chief says drive electric. The Volvo XC40 will be their first fully electric car and will be calling Germany, as one of the podcast listeners is currently at a German exhibition here in Europe. It's called Intersolar, and it's a massive exhibition that happens every year. It used to just be solar, but now it's all about tying together solar and storage and EV charging. And we'll make a phone call at the end of the show and have a chat to him about what's been going on this week at that massive exhibition. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Friday the 22nd of June edition of EV News Daily. It's Martyn Lee here with the news you need to know about electric cars and the move towards sustainable transport. We'll start with this strange spy saga happening at Tesla that we first heard on Sunday with Elon's email to the rest of the company about potential sabotage, people writing malicious code, exporting confidential data, and even going to the press, websites, with stories that were blatantly not true, but those stories, according to Tesla, were being reported as fact. Well, today, a Tesla spokesman just said that this, and I quote, "Yesterday afternoon, we received a phone call from a friend of the person that they issued the lawsuit against, telling us that he would be coming to the Gigafactory to, and I quote, shoot up the place. Police have been notified and actions are being taken to enhance security at Gigafactory," end quote. This whole saga gets more and more bizarre. Firstly, industrial sabotage, espionage is the kind of stuff of spy films, really. I suppose it does go on all the time, but when it finally happens, and this isn't the first time that Elon has been slightly paranoid about these things, and it has happened before, by the way, but for them to then file a lawsuit yesterday against the person they accuse of doing it, for that person to have gone to the press today, to CNBC and to the Washington Post, to give his side of it, to say he was a whistleblower. He was just doing it for everyone's safety. They were putting in smashed up cells and punctured cells in Model 3s. Everyone should know about this. I mean, I find that really hard to believe. A company that is so obsessed with safety, putting in smashed up cells in the Model 3? Really? Really? And then this bizarre twist where he's going to come and shoot up the place. You just can't make accusations like that. You just can't, because then the police will make arrests and start making criminal charges as well, whether or not you filed a lawsuit. Anyway, we'll leave it there. It's so strange. It's so bizarre. If I were all of the parties involved, stop, let the legal process do its thing, and then Tesla can go back to making cars, and this gentleman can go back to, doing whatever he was doing before his life turned upside down and a massive company decided to sue him. Well, let's move on to some positive news about electric cars. The FIA, the chief, the head of motorsports, if you like, they govern Formula E, things like Formula 1 as well. His name is Todt. I'm a big Formula 1 fan, so for many years I was aware of Todt as the head of Ferrari. Back when Michael Schumacher had those golden years of winning everything. He was part of that amazing team. Then he moved on to the FIA, where he's now the head there, and he's been doing some interviews, and so I got some quotes from him now, and he is a big fan of electric cars. He says this: "We are trying to make electric cars more user-friendly in order to encourage more people to buy electric cars, especially in cities. You know, one problem that we have with electric cars at the moment is limited autonomy. Recharging times is another, as it takes quite long. On top of that, each recharge is only good for a relatively short distance. That's why we strive to give a fresh perception or feeling to consumers," says Jean. And he continues, "When you think about mobility, climate change and the environment, the electric car is obviously better suited. Another aspect that is not directly linked with what we do now, but also high on our list of priorities, is traffic congestion, because citizens living in cities really feel the traffic and congestion every day. In a way, they get used to that, but it's time-consuming, expensive, and it causes pollution." Well, of course, yesterday was Clean Air Day, and lots of people using the hashtag Clean Air Day on their Twitter. It was amazing to see big networks in this country, like the Polar Charging Network, companies like Instavolt here in the UK, all making their EV chargers free. Ecotricity did it as well, free, yesterday on Clean Air Day. Fantastic things, announcements happening yesterday, like the London announcing more electric buses are coming into service. It was a very positive day to be on Twitter yesterday. Great stories coming through. And now the head of motor racing's governing body is saying you should be driving an electric car. And when he says that, and he knows more than most about all the details, the things in the pipeline, you should listen to him. Well, moving on to Volvo. Yesterday we told you about the S60 being made in America, being made in North America. No diesel alternatives for that. And now we find out today the Volvo XC40 is going to be the first pure battery car from Volvo's main brand, Volvo, arriving next year, 2019, after Polestar. But after Polestar 2, then that'll be followed by a pure electric XC90. Well, Thomas Ingerleth has been quoted by Autocar at yesterday's launch of the Volvo S60 in North America, and he said this: "It's not a secret anymore that the first full electric Volvo is on its way with the XC40 coming. It'll arrive very soon after the Polestar 2. That is the first to come that's not exotic," he says. "We'll start with the XC40, and then after that will come step by step in our model range will be the XC90. That'll be the master plan of how electrification will come to the Volvo product range. We will not establish products beside our hybrids. We will introduce electrification as a powertrain variant within the existing portfolio." He says, "You could say that is the difference to a lot of other mass production brands, but I have a hard time to understand how their plan will work in the long run. Electrification is the future of the industry. So how do you handle that as soon as you come to the majority of electric cars? How do you handle it in your portfolio?" He says, "I think it's more natural to say it's a powertrain variant that over time takes up the majority of sold vehicles," end quote. So there you go, big difference to what a lot of other people are doing. Others like VW with their ID range, they're starting from scratch, whole new platform, and we're going to build EVs on top of the platforms. Volvo are taking the way of doing it is to say, here are our cars, and over time, yeah, we'll change the powertrains, we'll make sure that they're designed for combustion, hybrid, pure BEV, and then at some point in the future, they'll just all be battery cars. Different way of doing it. That's what they think is going to be the way forward. Well, let's talk some batteries. And there's a new project to balance the German power grid. And Germany is already a leader in renewables. But we know sometimes the sun don't shine and the wind don't blow. Well, Mercedes-Benz Energy is revitalising an old coal plant in Germany by turning it into a big energy storage facility. The company unveiled the new project yesterday, June 21st, at the Elverlingsden power plant, which makes use of more than 1,000 modules of battery packs from its Mercedes electric vehicles, says BenzInsider.com. Now, although they've pulled out of the consumer market with their storage products, they're still moving forward with energy storage for commercial applications. The new project of Daimler stacks 1,920 modules in a facility that can hold 9.8 megawatt hours of storage. That's an installed capacity of 8.96 megawatts. Well, Daimler said this: "The large storage plant is therefore a symbol for the transformation in the storage and use of energy, away from fossil fuel electricity grid supply and towards a sustainable extension of the e-mobility value chain that reduces CO2. More incredibly positive news every single day. A year ago, this would have been massive news on its own, and today it's like the third or fourth story that we're getting to, but it's still huge news. Well, we've been used to seeing footage of the Tesla semi-truck in sort of shaky mobile camera footage that members of the public have taken. But now something direct from Tesla's Twitter account. It simply said this: "Tesla semi driving to Santa Rosa." That was it. But it was a little bit of video. Now, Fred Lambert at Electrek says that Santa Rosa, is about 50 miles away from the Golden Gate Bridge, though the Tripp had to start at another location south of the bridge. The Tesla Semi prototypes have been spotted around Sunnyvale, where Tesla has a prototyping facility, and around Fremont, where Tesla has the factory. It wouldn't be surprising if the vehicle started its journey from one of those locations, making the trip about 100 miles. End of quote on the article. Well, that 600-mile range, which we recently heard they're going to aim for, is still doubted by many in the trucking industry. History has taught us, though, don't underestimate Tesla. Well, in the past year, China has secured 21.7 billion euros worth of investment in EVs, while Europe has only secured 3.2 billion. That's according to a study by Transport and Environment. They're a European non-profit promoting sustainability, writes Benjamin Uiterbroek for Fleet Europe. The Chinese government, he says, requires car makers to obtain credits for the production of EVs that are equivalent to 10% of the overall passenger car market in 2019, 12% in 2020. However, the European Commission, on the other hand, proposed some new car CO2 reduction targets, 15% in 2025, 30% in 2030, didn't include sales targets for total zero emissions. Well, Julia Poliskanova, she is the Clean Vehicles Manager of Transport and Environment, and she said this, and I quote, China bet decisively on electric cars and is winning the race. It's understood that production follows demand, and demand is created with smart, ambitious industrial policy. But Europe still can't shake off its dirty diesel legacy. The EU ministers have two choices. Either we set an EV sales target to keep auto jobs at home, or allow European car makers to go on selling dirty diesels here while investing the earnings in EV production abroad and importing back to made-in-China electric cars. A link to that article on the show notes, by the way. Okay, so it's time to make a telephone call then, and one of the friends of the show, one of the regular podcast listeners, someone that I've chatted to on Twitter, is Phil Roberts. Now, Phil is the main man behind a solar company, but I will let him explain. And so we're going to give Phil a call now. He's out in Munich in Germany at something called Intersolar. It's a big exhibition that used to be purely solar, and now it's tying together more and more things to do with EVs and storage. And we're interrupting his lunch, I gather. Hello, Phil.
Hi, Martyn.
So you are from Electric Future, is that right? Just tell us a little bit about your company and what you do and what you have been doing.
We're a predominantly commercial solar battery and EV sort of integrator and installer. Some of our clients are sort of high street supermarkets, done some large installs on rooftop on some of the distribution centres for supermarkets and also on some of the actual stores. But I've been in the market for 7 or 8 years, which is an absolute lifetime in solar, and have now sort of decided that we're narrowing our focus down to solar, battery and EV.
That is right up our street on the podcast, and from all the listeners to the podcast are interested in. But you do EV charging, and you put Tesla power walls in if you want to.
Yeah, albeit that we're fairly agnostic to material suppliers. We installed Tesla as the main battery, albeit at the moment a little bit difficult to get hold of because of Model 3, sort of soaking up all the cells.
They're kind of busy over in Nevada making batteries at the moment and making cells at the moment. Okay, so we'll come back at the very end and just ask about what's next for you. But for now, the past couple of days, I've seen you on Twitter talking about some of the things going on. You're in Munich, is that right? Tell us about what you're doing over there.
Yeah, indeed. I'm at a global conference called Intersolar. Historically been the largest sort of solar gathering in the world. There's around about 50,000 people attend, spread over around about 55,000 square metres. So if you think of a Tesco Extra, a large one, that's about 5,000 square metres. So it's sort of 11 really large Tesco stores full of all sorts of bits and pieces of solar, batteries, EV.
How do you even get round that in the time?
It takes a long time. You can easily spend 2 days just walking around the stands. I'm here for 3 days and a few meetings to see some of our supply chain, also see what's new, what's on the market.
Now, you've been involved, like you say, with solar for a long time now, and you are tying together solar and storage and EVs. Have you noticed in terms of the kind of things that are at these shows also a shift in the wider market?
Yeah, very much so. 3-4 years ago, it was very much a solar-oriented market, which we think was forced by the sort of feed-in tariffs across Europe. You can see over the last 2 to 3 years that battery, it's sort of coming down the line, but this year it's very much in focus. Virtually all the inverter manufacturers that does the DC to AC conversion, they've all got battery offerings now on the stands, and most of them are actually integrating with EV charge points into it, so along the lines of a Zappi type unit.
I saw you tweeting earlier this week one of the products that you'd seen by Intersolar, who you're familiar with already, and they're moving into the EV space, and a kind of a combined inverter and EV charger, but also just standalone EV charging stuff if you can't have your inverter in the same place. SolarEdge are one of the bigger ones, is that right?
It is, yeah. They are very much right at the forefront of the market. They've always had very smart products that optimise at the panel level and so minimise shade, get the best performance out of the system. But some of the products that they're bringing out now are very much pitched towards the sort of demand response market that EVs will enable. One of the things that we often see is that people think that EVs are going to put a great stress on the grid and it's going to cause a lot of additional cost. We actually see it the other way around, that EVs will be used as a vehicle-to-grid type arrangement and will actually end up easing pressure on power stations because a smart grid will charge at the right times and minimise loads. And we think that overall that will actually end up dropping the energy price and not increasing it.
We hear a lot about the Zappy technology, and it seems to be a big thing in this country. Is it a case that these other big companies might come along and kind of not so much eat their lunch, but also almost that like they've done the groundwork in establishing, look, there's this technology you can do to charge your car on excess, and then these big companies with scale come along and sort of eat into their market?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that I've noticed very much. There's Sonnen, who are a battery company. They've got an integrated EV charger. ABB have got something very similar. SMA have got something very similar. So all the traditional inverter guys are all sort of moving into that space. I think quite often people forget that UK is actually quite a forward market in EV. We've got a reasonably good penetration into market. We've got a reasonably good penetration with solar as well. We are actually leading in some respects. We need more rapid chargers. Yeah, certainly from a domestic integration point, the way that the UK network's set up and how the cost structure is set up allows some quite interesting advances.
And then when we talk about the really big companies like E.ON, the German company E.ON, they've got like 40,000 employees. If anyone's listening, sort of the North American listeners, they are a huge energy company, like 40 billion in revenue type company. And even they're getting in. I saw you tweeting about this earlier today. They're getting in on the act as well.
They have a stand here. I know if you look at a lot of the sort of big actors within Europe, so E.ON, EDF, ENGIE, they're all buying battery companies, solar companies, and looking towards integrating that distributed grid rather than being just the traditional sort of coal-fired generators that they were previously. Most of them have sold those assets off and are moving across to a distributed grid now.
What do you think about Tesla's solar roof?
Very nice. Haven't seen too much detail on it as yet. I think it's certainly the future. The problem always is with those sorts of systems is the interconnect between the number of points on a system. So if you think every individual tile's got to have a connector, that means that you've got a lot of cost in terms of connectors. I don't think it's ever going to be a particularly cheap system. It's certainly probably the best system in terms of looks on the market.
Also at the show this week, you've seen Samsung showing off some new battery products. Of course, they make batteries for the BMW i3. What else have you seen sort of battery-wise at the show?
Yeah, that's probably the interesting part about the show is that you can tell where the market's going by the size of the stands. So the ones that are spending the most money at the stands are the ones that are going to be the big market that's expanded. The battery stands are very big in comparison to what they've been in the last few years. I know LG Chem's stand is 4 or 5 times the size it was just 2 years ago, which means they're obviously making plenty of money. And I know that when we talk to them about battery supply for static storage, they're talking sort of 6 to 9 months lead time before they could start the delivery.
Wow. All right, well, we'll let you get back to the show and your lunch because we interrupted that when we called you. If people want to find out more, they can find you at ef.energy. That is ef.energy. And you are at Phil Roberts on Twitter. So what's next? What's next for the company then?
Sort of back to our roots to a degree at the moment. There's a little bit of a feed-in tariff rush in the UK. Feed-in tariff stops 1st of April next year. So because most of our projects are sort of larger commercial, it takes around about 6 months to get those installed from the point of starting. Means that at the moment we're on a big push for installs before the end of the year. Looking at some rather large fast chargers for London, for the London taxi fleet, and also some large static storage for battery.
Wonderful. Well, hey, we'd love to get you back on the podcast sometime in the future, and I'll pick your brains about my roof, which is, I want solar, but super shady, loads of concern. But now's not the time, but can we get you back on sometime?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, solar edge is your system for that one, I would say.
Fantastic. All right, look, Phil, have a great time. Thank you for joining us today and updating us on what's happening over in Munich.
No problem. Thanks, Martyn.
Once again, thank you so much for chatting to us on the phone there, and and stay in touch. We'd love to hear more about the kind of things you do. By the way, one final thing on the podcast today, and it's kind of in our community section, if you like, the bit where we're hearing from the listeners of the podcast, and a fascinating tweet. Yeah, it was a direct message came through from one of the listeners who himself wants to get a Hyundai Kona, and in Norway, where they are first going to in Europe, apart from the domestic market, I think when they come to Europe, it's going to be Norway that you first get the Hyundai Kona. Well, it's from a forum, and I just popped a little tweet out a moment ago, by the way, to Christina Boo, who is the ultimate knowledge on all things Norwegian EV. She hasn't replied yet. However, if she does, I'll certainly update you on the podcast tomorrow. So, this is on the forum, somebody says this is a letter that Hyundai have sent to Kona customers who have pre-ordered. Now, please, it's in Norwegian, so please excuse my bad Google translation. The gist of it says that Kona Electric, this is sent by Hyundai Motor Norway, by the way. Kona Electric has already proven to be a huge success for us. 20,000 Norwegians reported their interest, and after 2 weeks of exclusive pre-orders, I think that word is, the orders were 6,969. This means the interest in the model is greater than we expected or hoped for. We understand people are now excited about the delivery situation, and it's clear the interest we're seeing will show the delivery situation being as this. With 6,969 orders, they're now processing those. Any new customers in Norway who place an order for a Hyundai Kona from July 2nd onwards won't get them until at least mid-2020. That's a year away. Order it this July, get it next July. That's a long time to wait. It says that Hyundai Motor Norway will today, which is 21st of June, send out complete lists with expected delivery time for those who have placed orders to our dealers. And so it goes on with more details. Now, there is no confirmation, by the way, that that letter is genuine. I've got no reason to doubt it. There's nothing controversial in there. It's full of good news. It's saying that we've had so many interests in our car. If you buy one now, if you order one now, deposit one now, you won't get one for a year. I mean, it's good news. I don't know why somebody would make that up. You have reason to believe it, but I would put that out there, that's the only source I've got for that story. So take it from a forum. However, if demand is going to be so high, or you could spin that round if you want to, if production is going to be so low, did Hyundai Motor Company, so Hyundai and Kia, underestimate the demand? Are they being risk averse? Are they waiting for battery pack prices to come down so that EVs are more profitable? Are they just rinsing the last of petrol and diesel, or gas and diesel production lines? Who's to know? I don't know. Hyundai are really positive on EVs. Whenever I tweet about them, or I've tweeted them, always reply straight back. They've got a great PR team. They're super focused on making great electric cars. It seems not enough of them. And is that intentional? Is it that they're just doing it step by step because they are ahead of many others? I don't know. And I'd love to know, but I don't know. And it's a shame because they are looking like great cars from what we've seen so far. Domestic deliveries have already started, and there's YouTube videos and stuff, again, in Korean. But if you can, if you speak Korean, maybe you're in Korea. But if not, then if you can just look at the pictures and understand what they're saying. I mean, the reviews look like from the early buyers that have had delivery already, the Kona looks like a great car. So, what can they do? Can they up the production? Well, those battery contracts with people like LG Chem have been done a while ago, you'd imagine. You imagine that they're relatively fixed. I think there's probably some leeway in there to increase the orders, but double, triple, who knows? We'll keep an eye on it. That is the latest anyway. Thank you so much, Phil. It's a long one today. Again, thank you for bearing with us. If these are too long, by the way, let me know and we can shorten them. In the meantime, if you want any of the previous, and there have been shorter ones in the past, by the way, any previous news episode, all 157 of them, are all on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, carry us now, YouTube. We put the audio on there just for anybody that is into YouTube without the pictures. Tune in, Stitcher, and the blog at evnewsdaily.com. You know one thing, I always want to make sure that these remain free online. If you subscribe, you get them first and free and automatically. And I always want them to be free, the archive on, for as long as we can do that. It should be. They're always free as a resource. Well, if you want to leave a little review, I mean, you know how much it would make a huge difference, because All these things are based on ratings and reviews these days. Come and say hi on the socials. Search EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Holy moly, almost forgot to mention it. I will catch you tomorrow. We're lining up a special edition, a Saturday special tomorrow with an engineering company here in the UK called Teva Motors. It looks like it's definitely going to happen, and we'll have the interview to bring you tomorrow, all about the extended range trucks they are making to change urban deliveries. And it's a fascinating concept. Not going pure BEV, going range extended. But I'll tell you more tomorrow. It looks like it's definitely going to be on the cards. And that will be your Saturday special podcast. Thank you for bearing with me. Catch you tomorrow.